Well, hi guys and girls, Emma again. Welcome back to the spare room and welcome back to my Patreon page. We've made a bit of progress on this. It's time to make some more. I've spent a bit of time getting materials put together and cut for the sheet metal work and the boiler work and canopy etc. on this little engine. I will put a list up. There's the boiler wrappers and ash pans and ends, bits and pieces. These are all stainless steel. There's some metal parts, so there's some steel parts too, and some brass parts, but that's a pretty good start. I will put a list up so you can start looking and find some. Big shout out to the guys who've bought a set of castings. That's pretty amazing. There's one set's been posted, the other set's on its way, and you should have them soon. If you're one of those people, or anyone really who's watching this on Patreon, drop me an email and I'll find you some plans. That's the next job. So get in touch. Get in touch and I'll get them to you. They're ready to go. Next job is these two axles in here, and if we have a look at the book again, further down, if you look at the plans, this is on page 78. There's an axle here, it's 3/16, and a front one and a back one is quarter, and they're threaded 6mm on the, or 5mm on each end of these, and 6mm on each end of the long ones. And Kenneth has put dome nuts on the ends, which are really nice. You can go and buy some dome nuts, but this video we're going to look at making a form tool and grinding it up and making some brass dome nuts out of 7/16 and 5/16 brass hex, and making a form tool and making the axles. First job is to cut these to length, and one has to be 134mm and one needs to be 110, the small one. So that's pretty straightforward. Most of you should be able to cut these to length, 110mm, clean up the ends, thread 6mm each end, and you'll have a couple of axles. So first thing is to mark these the right lengths, and a ruler's going to do that. Just cut them off, and I'm going to put them in the lathe, and I'm going to file the ends up and thread them and measure them again to make sure they are the right length, and dress the ends up until they match. It's always a good idea to cut a bit longer rather than a bit shorter if you're not sure. This one the same. Let's have a bit of a look over at the lathe when we've chopped them off. So what I've done here is I've put this back in the chuck and I've cleaned the end up. Don't try and poke it out enough to do this job and machine the end of this little shaft, because you will bend it or you'll have problems if this isn't on centre height. So do it back in here where it's nice and stable. Then move him out, and I've given this just a bit of a rub with a bit of emery tape. Just quite a long piece over the top. This, nice and safe. That way you can let go of it if something happens and you've not got your fingers anywhere near it. So just give it a bit of a rub up. It won't take very much. If you've reamed these holes, or if you've drilled them nice and neat and they're a fraction tight, you might not even need to do that, but I just gave it a bit of a clean up. I'm going to do that on each end. The thread here doesn't matter much. If you use 6mm shaft and 6mm drill, tap an M6, but a lot of my American friends probably don't have an M6 tap or M6 stock, so we're going to live with quarter. I've got a few taps. I've got a quarter 28 and quarter 26, and I've got quarter Whitworth which is 1/4 and that's probably what I'm going to do. We've got 3 different taps here. There's a starter tap or a taper tap. It's got quite a lot of land on here for starting in a hole. And this one's an intermediate, which is square on the end, or it should be, and it's got a bit less taper on it. And this one's a plug tap, which goes right up to the end. This one's a bit sort of tied, and we might look for another one, but that's sort of what a taper tap, plug tap looks like. So if you've got a set of those, hopefully in a bit better condition than those ones I showed you. All in all here, I think I've probably got a dozen 1/4 inch Whitworth taps. And we're going to need a 1/4 inch Whitworth button die, which I've also got, or 1/4 inch whatever you've got. We're going to need a die stock too. This is just a cheap die cast one. It's sort of alright. This die's got a taper in one side and a square up against the other side, so we want to use the taper side to start the thread. And I'm going to run that up against the end of my drill chuck like that to keep it nice and square to start with. And a little bit of oil. And for a smaller lathe, this is quite a big thread to be cutting like this, so I'm going to keep the pressure up against the tailstock here until it's well and truly started 2 or 3 threads, otherwise it will go sideways. And we'll back him off and just break that chip when it starts getting a bit tight, and have a look at the thread. And it's very, very easy to go too far, so we only want 6mm. If we have a look at our dome nut, this one, the bought one, doesn't even have that much thread, so I'm not even going to make them that long, I don't think. This requires a little bit of thought. Ideally, we don't want too much slop like this. We want dome nuts that screw all the way on. Now that's only about 4 or 5mm thread there, and that's probably looking pretty good, so I'm going to leave that be. Put a chamfer on there with a file because it's quite sharp. So the same goes with this one, and I've modified the length from 134mm on the longer one, and I'll show you that in a second. There are some critical dimensions, and it depends on your wheel castings and what you end up with. Everything's got to work, but there's a couple of spaces in them that can be adjusted within a couple of mil each side, so you've really got 3 or 4mm to play with, and it's not going to look too shabby. Get it as good as you can, but realise that working to 10 microns on this project mostly is going to be a bit of a waste of effort. I've changed die stocks here because this is a P&N from Australia and it's a decent one. 316/24. I believe it's probably Whitworth form. UNC would be just as good. M5 would be probably just as good too. And we've put a bit of thread on there so that the nut screws on. Just take the high spots and the burrs off with a bit of emery tape. That's pretty straightforward. Make sure the wheel fits and spins. And there's one front wheel on. So there we go, it's 4 axles, pretty quick, or 2 axles and pretty quick with 4 threads on them. take a bit of time. It's very easy to get a burr on the end of the thread here, and then they won't turn or they won't go right up to the nut. This wants to be about 82 millimeters between on the front, and this wants to be here about 84, 86, something like that. So this axle is probably going to be a little bit long, but you can adjust it later, or you can mess around with it now and get it right and make everything else to fit. So that's the wheels on axles. That looks pretty cool. That's going to be a pretty cute engine, and it's starting to look like something now. So I wanted to do a bit of a video. We'll sharpen up a form tool, just out of a bit of high-speed steel. I know that I have viewers that struggle a bit with high-speed steel and don't tend to use it because it's a bit scary, etc, etc. You've got to sharpen it, you've got to know what you're doing, and they just use carbide and get mixed results with that too, I think. So let's have a bit of a play with a bit of 1/4 inch high-speed steel and get the bench grinder out, clean the bench off, and make up a form tool to actually produce these. So we don't need very much to make a little form tool to make the domes on these. Pretty straightforward. I'm just going to use a bit of hex brass. So I'm just going to use a bit of hex brass to make the nuts. That's pretty straightforward. The domes want to be a little bit smaller diameter than the hex. This is 7/16, 11 mil roughly. If we made the domes 3/8, so the radius we need is about 3/16. If we got a bit of 3/8 brass, or a bit of 3/8 steel, whatever, round, that makes a good template to make the form to. High speed steel comes usually in lengths like this, and this is a box of nice stuff, but it's available, and if you hang around the markets, it's a good idea to see if you can find some. It turns up either in boxes on eBay, or you can buy new stuff. It's not usually as good. This is Swedish ASAB, it's good steel. Same with all tools. There's this die cast die stock is what's normally available from China or wherever. It's pretty crappy. It's really not much fun. The die is loose in here. The handles are loose. The handles are a little bit short. It's got a funny taper on here, so you can't sit this up against anything. This one does have decent screws in it, but most of them don't. If you can find old Greenfields or P&N or Sutton or whatever, depending on which country you're in, die stocks like this, it's all made up out of one piece casting or forging, and that's a pretty nice bit of gear. Usually they got the screws missing, but it's not a big job to stop at the nuts and bolts place on the way home and find the right screws for it. And rather than slot heads, it's not a bad idea to put umbracos in there with Allen keys, and that fixes a lot of problems with them. So that's the way to buy tools like that. And it's also the way to buy high-speed steel. Don't buy new stuff, buy second-hand old stock. It's floating around everywhere. Now, this has got an angle on each end, and we can use that to our advantage. This tool's going to need a little bit of clearance against the work. If we have a look here, sitting it on centre, it doesn't want to rub there or rub on the side before it rubs on the point, because it won't cut. So we really want that clearance on there, so we're going to use that. I've just got an Audi bench grinder. It was like 40 bucks, I think. It wasn't even that, $39.95, something like that. It's nice and smooth, and once we take the high spots and things off the grinding wheels, it runs pretty nice too. So there's a couple of ways you can do this. You can use a diamond. This is probably the best for dressing up like grinding wheels for this sort of work because it's cheap. You can buy it at a hardware store. I'm not sure what it is. Impregnated something. It's probably concrete or something. But it'll clean up the corner of your wheel or the shape of your wheel or the face of your wheel pretty quick and easy. You need a vacuum cleaner because it is really dusty and dirty when you use it. But that's basically the equipment you need to sharpen. You need decent light. That's sort of important. And some high-speed steel. So what I'm going to do is just dress the corner of this wheel around to about the same radius as this, and we'll use that to clean up the grinder, clean up the tool. It doesn't want much, and if we do the small one first, we don't have to clean up one side of the wheel each time, and we want to make sure that this angle is behind us. We're going to do one on each end. So if we have a look, that sort of follows our contour pretty nice. That's what we're looking for. It's got a bit of relief on here, and it's got a bit of relief this way too. So that's probably all we really need. If we quench that out, all it's going to need is a rub on the top with a little oil stone. And we should have one nice sharp form tool. That's one side. The other side wants to be a bit smaller, and we're going to do the same because this is cut at exactly the same angle. So if we use the bottom here, and there we are, we've got a small radius and a big radius. Don't burn your fingers, don't let it go, hang on to it properly. Give them a rub on it on a stone here. And that's a fairly straightforward little job. We can put the bench grinder away and give everything a vacuum up because this dust gets everywhere when that slows down and stops. And look at setting it up. Making some dome nuts. So all I've done is cut the pieces of brass to somewhere near a bit longer than they need to be. If you've got a bigger machine, then this 7/16 hex will go through the headstock and you can part them off. But I find with mass production work, it's fairly easy to start with a lot of little small pieces as opposed to worrying about getting your part off lengths and things all exactly the same as just one measurement you don't need to make. So I'm just going to grip these, face the end, and we're going to drill them and tap them so that they screw on the axle. and then we'll turn them around and we'll put the domes on them. So pretty straightforward. Put your bit of hex in the chuck. Clean it up. Give it a rub with a file. If you've got a file with a safety edge, isn't a bad idea. Number 7 drill down 7mm is about what I worked out. That's tapping drill size for quarter Whitworth anyway. Have a look on a chart and see what you can find. And I'm probably just going to hit this with the centre drill again to put a chamfer on it. And a tap follower if you've got one. If you haven't, a tap's going to be fine in the chuck. And just hand pressure against there. And there until it stops. And we'll finish it off with a bottom tap. Take him out. And we'll do the other one to match, and we're done on that side. So next job, we sort of want to get these the same length. So the best thing, if you've got another piece of high-speed steel, or if you've got a parallel, or you've got a bit of round bar, or a bit of flat bar or something, or even a drill, something that you can put in there just to get them the right distance. If you've got serrations on your chuck, that's probably as good a way of doing it as any, if you've got good eyes. We'll find our nice new form tool, use the big end. Now let's have a look at this. I've set this up nice and parallel with the side of my tool holder, and just down nice and flat. That's going to cut this bit of brass just nice, without any rake angle on the top. Just flat, as long as it's sharp, right? And I've just clamped another piece of high-speed steel on top there, so that it all holds it nice and firm, and that's out level there. It's not going to move, everything's going to be nice. Make sure our tool holder is nice and tight. And we need to find the centre. There's several ways to do that. Probably the best is just to centre in the drill chuck. Or if you can get it in there, just your tailstock centre. And we can use the tool holder on this. You might need to pack it if you haven't got this sort of luxury, but it won't take a lot just to get into the right centre. Hopefully this is going to work for us. I think you can see the tool there. Need a bit of adjustment until we get this so that it cuts all the way round and so that it's close enough. So I'm going to mess around with this a bit. It probably wants to come out in the chuck a fraction more. And that's a pretty neat looking little end on there. Good idea to remember to measure between here and the back of the chuck so we get the next one in the right spot. But this will just need a little bit of a clean up. And a rub with some 1200 to shine it up, and we've got one done. And set the other one up the same and we'll do the same job. So there we go. There's two little dome nuts. They look pretty good. That's what we should end up with. Bonder screw on there. And one screws on the other side. Make a note now of this distance here that you've got here, and write it down on your plans or whatever, and then you'll know when we get the firebox in here, we'll be able to tell how long the spaces need to be, and how long the front axle piece needs to be as well. So that's kind of how they look so far. I want to say thanks for watching. Thanks for all your support. If you're watching this on Patreon, I really appreciate that. It enables me to do things that I otherwise wouldn't be able to, and to share them with you, and I really appreciate that opportunity. And in particular, a big shout out to the $10 Patreons. It's an amazing thing that you guys do, and a bit above and a bit beyond. So this video is for you. And next job I've said was to be the boiler, and probably it will. We'll see how we go. This was just a little project for today. At some point we need to put a boiler on here, and we're still chasing up some tubes, so that's going to be the next thing. And say thanks for watching. Be kind to each other, and more soon, guys and girls.